From the edge of forgotten knowledge, from the black hollows of the unknowable, welcome to the Abyss Chronicles. If you hunger for stories that scratch at the thin membrane of sanity, you've come to the right place. Subscribe, like, and join us as we peer into the infinite dark. They said the artifacts were dead, cold husks, inert monoliths scattered across the earth like the remnants of a long-dead civilization whose language, purpose, and gods were buried in the dust of time. But they were never dead, only dormant, waiting for a pattern in the sky to whisper their names again. The first artifact came alive in Antarctica. At 2:16 a.m., a low-frequency hum echoed from the pillar half buried beneath the ice shelf. Not a sound, not really, but a vibration that passed directly into the bones of the research team. Half of them vomited. One man collapsed into a seizure. The others stared blankly into the middle distance, their pupils blown wide, whispering words no one taught them. And then, simultaneously, similar reactions occurred across the globe. In the deep sea off the Pacific Ridge, an undersea probe recorded the Mariana artifact, emitting pulses of unknown radiation. The camera feed failed, but not before capturing a fleeting image. A shadow in the black, not cast by anything in the physical world. It moved against the current, shape ever shifting, tendrils coalescing from particulate matter like a dream trying to become real. The Sahara monolith began to rotate, slowly, imperceptibly. Yet each hour its alignment shifted a fraction of a degree toward the constellation Ophiuchus, toward a star catalogued only in apocryphal astrological grimoires, not in any modern sky chart. But it was Dr. Edwin Vale who first pieced it together. Vale wasn't a believer, a rational man, a physicist turned anomalous systems researcher after funding dried up in academia. He'd seen strange things, sure, but he dismissed most as coincidence, misinterpretation, or faulty instrumentation. Until he stood at the edge of the Siberian dig site and watched the artifact hum in perfect rhythm with solar flare cycles. Despite being buried for at least 30,000 years, Vale dug deeper, not just in soil, but in history. In dusty vaults beneath the Library of Novgorod, he unearthed fragments of a forbidden volume, the Canticles of the Deep Aeon. Not a mythic poem, as once thought, but a coded alignment chart, a manual. Its diagrams matched the artifact locations exactly. The monoliths weren't random. They were positioned with impossible precision to triangulate cosmic vectors. And those vectors all pointed not toward Earth, but through it. What lay beneath the surface he could not say, but something waited there, something very old. The cults returned next. The Black Meridian, the Circle of Spiral Sleep, the Cult of Null Geometry, names spoken only in psychiatric evaluations and intelligence files redacted into oblivion. They gathered around the artifact sites, not to worship, but to listen. They stood in silence, letting the hum of the monoliths vibrate through them. Some carved spirals into their skin, others plucked out their eyes. One cult cell in Istanbul broadcast a 27-minute audio loop described by listeners as the sound of drowning in a language. Afterwards, several viewers were found dead, their skulls caved inward, faces twisted into euphoric horror. What the cults understood, and what Vale finally realized, was that the artifacts were not just beacons. They were instruments, a symphony of awakening, each one attuned to a cosmic harmonic, timed with the great astronomical convergence. The music of the spheres, rewritten not by math or myth, but by something far older than either. He tried to warn people, sent his findings to universities, governments, even fringe communities online. Most dismissed him. A few listened, none understood. Then the side effects began. Migraines in population clusters near artifact resonance zones, spontaneous glossolalia, electrical interference in symmetrical patterns. Entire towns began to dream the same dream, a monolithic eye blacker than space, opening above the earth. Animals reacted first. Flocks of birds flew in fractal formations. Dogs howled endlessly at midday. Whales beached themselves in perfect geometric spirals. Then came the dissonance. Time fractured. Shadows began to flicker out of sync with their sources. In certain places, people reported echoes of events that hadn't happened yet. Others claimed to see themselves walking parallel paths, flickering copies making different choices, existing for only seconds before vanishing. Vale stood at the edge of the final artifact, the so-called Gate Monolith, on a salt flat in Namibia. He was alone, except for the cultists chanting in the distance. He looked into the chasm that had formed beneath it and saw no stone or soil, only motionless blackness. Not absence, but compression, a distortion in space itself. From the gate, a shape emerged, not a creature, not even a presence, a concept given form. It didn't move, but everything else did, twisting around it as if space and logic had to make room for something fundamentally incompatible. Vale fell to his knees, not from fear, not even awe, but from understanding. He finally grasped it. The Earth had never been our own. It was leased terrain, a landing point, a tuning fork, a womb for something beyond definition. And now the child of the stars had begun to stir. The sky cracked on the final night of alignment, not with fire but silence, a hole in the world's voice. Reality twisted inward, folding like a blooming flower. Nothing came through because it had always been here, just waiting to be noticed. The entities, the cosmic minds, weren't arriving. They were awakening. Across the planet, people began to forget their names. Clocks no longer agreed on the hour. Mirrors showed strangers. And language broke down. Not because of ignorance, but because meaning itself had begun to erode. There was no battle, no explosion, no invasion. Just a slow, creeping unraveling of everything familiar. The Earth didn't end. It simply changed. It became a place where logic was optional, where thought could rot, where time bled sideways. And in that new world, the artifacts finally fell silent, having served their purpose. Dr. Vale's final notes were found months later, scratched into the walls of an abandoned observatory. The last words were a scrawl repeating over and over. It was never our world. It was never our world. It was never our world. The stars still shine, but they shine on a world no longer our own. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the unknowable, like, subscribe, and stay with us. We have many more truths to uncover, each one stranger, darker, and more terrifying than the last. Until next time, keep your eyes on the void, and don't blink.